You're still searching for that breakthrough that always feels just out of reach. What is your true life path, and how do you finally find it? Welcome to Say It Anyway, the podcast where we help you unlock the breakthrough you've been waiting for so your true life path can finally come to life. Each week, we share powerful practical tools you can use right now to start transforming your life. You'll hear raw, honest conversations with people from all walks of life, people who found their way forward and are here to share mindsets, strategies, and wisdom that help them get there. I'm James Ferrigno. I've helped people reconnect with their power for years. I'll guide you beyond surface level solutions into a deeper way of seeing the world, one rooted in connection, courage, and open-hearted dedication. This is your space to think differently, live boldly, and finally do the thing you were meant to do. Let's get started.
Welcome to Say It Anyway. This is James Ferrigno, and our guest today is Romi Elan. He's a lifelong explorer of life and business. Welcome, Romi.
Thanks for having me, James.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. We'll just launch into some questions here. You grew up in Israel. Can you tell me maybe a couple of your really fond memories from that time?
Well, first, it might be prudent to mention I was born in the U.S. in
Oh,
Los
you were?
Angeles, and my family, when I reached the age of 10, decided to move to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a formative experience of
Yeah.
moving cultures. I did not know the language and had to uh, enter into kind of a new way of being, learn a new language, learn how to be with people. And I think that was a very formative initial experience.
Yeah.
Ended up moving from a big city, LA, to a very small mountain town in the north of Israel called Kfar Vradim. So it was really a big shift in how things were. I went from my parents needing to drive me around to being able to walk to school and be out all day with no supervision.
Wow. So that sounds like a really big transition. So how was that for you? Challenging?
Interestingly, I remember it as easeful.
Mm.
I think I was well accepted by a few people in my class then that knew English and kind of took me in and were excited to have the new American kid as their
Mm-hmm.
friend. I remember I came stocked with duffel bags of baseball mitts and hockey equipment and got to introduce all these people. These were sports that nobody played or nobody knew about really, other than TV maybe, and got to teach other kids kind of the American sports. And yeah, it wasn't without challenges. Again, coming and learning a new language took a little while, but I think I got pretty well integrated within a year or so.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you now work a lot with on connection and community. Did any of that start during that time in your formative years, or is that something that came later?
It definitely started during my formative years. From a very young age, probably speaking about from about the age of 10, I was in fourth grade and
Mm-hmm.
onwards, I developed a keen interest in relationships and in connection. I think I started kind of being curious about, you know, intersex relations, kind of crushes and falling in love a little bit earlier than my peers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I constantly kind of drove and I was very just curious about it. I felt the attraction to connection, whether it be romantic or just as friendships. And I used to think a lot and speak a lot to people about how we do relationships and what matters and what doesn't. And I was a very sensitive kid. I used to get very sad and sometimes offended when other
Mm-hmm.
kids would not understand what I'm talking about or think that I'm just making stuff up.
Uh-huh.
even though I now know I was just ahead of the curve. I wasn't making anything up, but I
Yeah.
kind of brought topics up a little bit earlier than people were ready for. And yeah, throughout my teen years and then afterwards in my college years, bringing people together and exploring different ways of connecting was a core part of who I was and a core part of what I did as hobbies, as passions. At the age of 14, I started uh, a I was a DJ, and I started kind of a
Mm-hmm.
party facilitation business
Ah.
where people, parents would pay me to come and host a 3-hour birthday party for their kids. They were, maybe in the 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade. I got a little bit, as I got older, my market expanded. And I did that all throughout
Hmm.
middle school and high school. And that
Oh, that
also,
sounds
I
like
mean,
fun.
that track went well into my college years as well. I basically financed all my college years by being a party promoter for a local nightclub. And I also would host kind of specialty events at my house that always had some kind of costume theme and different activities that
Ah.
encourage connection in different ways. And I always was fascinated by how people seem to want, or most people seem to want, a certain level of connection
Yeah.
and want a certain level of, intimacy and kind of lowering their guards. But then how bad people are on average at doing
Mm-hmm.
it without kind of some kind of structured uh, activity to pull them into it. Kind of, if people on average left to their own devices, kind of sink to the lowest common denominator of small talk and chit chat
Yeah.
unprompted. Yep. And
Yeah.
so I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so you're starting to answer this question, but your work is very diverse. It spans, serious business strategy, like being head of operations at Rising Team currently, and deeper transformational stuff like, festivals and culture. How do you balance these and how do they integrate together? How do they function together?
So I think during my 20s, my life kind of took a dual
Mhm.
track. I was doing things in parallel
Okay.
while I was promoting connection and bringing people together for experiences. I was also pursuing a career that was more in formal business. I studied economics and business, and my
Mm,
first jobs out of college were kind of very high level global management consulting. And so I kind of ran these parallel lives where, at least at that time, where my business persona or my professional persona was solving kind of big business problems for the world's leaders. And in my private time, I was really interested in the micro connection of people and bringing people together. And my worlds didn't really collide until after I came to the US in 2012 for
hmm
business school. And I went to business school at UC Berkeley. And at business school, all of my friends were running from consulting interview to investment banking interview to product manager at tech companies interviews. And I really realized that that wasn't where my heart was at. I kind of didn't want to lead the parallel lives anymore. I wanted to have my kind of personal passions and my professional life integrate.
hmm
And that's when I made a decision after business school to embark on an endeavor where I started an organization called SoulPlay, which is the
hmm
shirt that you see.
Yeah.
And SoulPlay from the beginning was an endeavor to create events and experiences and invite people into a world where they could be their kind of most aligned self or their truest self. And maybe it's a self that they doesn't get to come out at work and doesn't get to come out even sometimes with friends. And so I basically wanted to create a world where people are invited to both discover and then hang out in that more authentic self. And SoulPlay
Hmm.
was born. And it
Yeah.
was born in the beginning as an idea for a 3-day festival up in Pinecrest, which
Yeah.
is um, near Yosemite in the Stanislaus National Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, what I thought would just be an event, one event, very quickly grew to a kind of full blown community that included multiple multi-day events per year and then multiple single-day events per year and a thriving online community where people connected. And it's a community that still thrives till this day.
Yeah, certainly a big part of the culture in California for sure. So it seems like SoulPlay was just a natural outgrowth of who you are and what you've been doing. But was there some thing that sparked you to actually do it? To like, now I'm going to start building this?
I think the idea and the desire had been brewing for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
From before going to business school. I found myself in
Oh, okay.
India right before going to business school. I found myself in India, backpacking through India, and I found myself at the Osho meditation resort or Osho ashram in Pune. And my wife at the
Hmm.
time, she had read an article that said that the most successful people write down their goals, their big goals, their vision for themselves, for their life. And she basically made us do this exercise where we were meditating a lot at the time, and we meditated and just kind of tried to really think through and then write down what our goals might be.
Yeah.
And I remember that what came to me at the time was, there wasn't a concrete how, but I knew that I wanted to deliver significant impact on people's personal development and or spiritual development
Uh-huh.
as a goal. And so that idea was brewing of kind of playing part of this. How can I help impact people on their personal journey? It was less important to me to impact them on their professional journey,
Uh-huh.
but more the connection to their self, to their heart, to their emotions, to their community, and kind of
Uh-huh.
the feeling of fulfillment from all of those. And so it was brewing, but it kind of went in and out, and normal life fears, finances, where are they going to come from? How will I support myself? And one day I'm going to want a family, and how am I going to support that? And so there was always a tension between, doing something that I really felt called to from my heart and the very clear path that I had been walking, this kind of, consulting, high finance type path, which had a pretty clear path towards financial success and prestige. And so it was a real big battle
Yeah.
internally. There was a lot of tension between those two, and it wasn't so obvious uh, to give one up for the other.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like an easy choice to make. Yeah.
But ultimately, what made the change for me
Mm-hmm.
was sometime in early 2015. I was post business school and I still hadn't made up my mind. But what really clicked for me, I was I was like losing sleep over this. I had the idea already for Soul Play, but I also didn't know. I
Okay.
had all the fears of trying something new. I'd never done anything like it. I didn't know what I was doing or whether I could
Mm.
succeed or how it was going to work. And I was losing sleep over that. And ultimately, the thing that swayed me was kind of an internal exercise that I did where I imagined meeting my future self. I only picked 5 years the older.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay, let's just say I'm meeting my future self. I was, 33 at the time. So I was meeting my 38-year-old self.
Uh-huh.
And I imagined meeting me, and kind of I played the scenarios, and I said, well, if I decide not to go through with it and I kind of continue on my career, my business career, and make money and have a house and have cars and whatever it is, what would this person, but never tried the soul play idea?
Uh,
What would this future self say? And I, played both scenarios, kind of, let's say I do it. And I took the worst scenario where I said, let's say I do it and I fail miserably. It just doesn't work. I do it for 1 year and it doesn't work, or I do it for 2 years and it doesn't work. And I still meet this future self. And in all of the scenarios that I ran this conversation, my future self was really proud of my 33-year-old self for trying to do the soul play thing, whether or not it succeeded, and was pretty disappointed that I didn't try in the scenario where I didn't try. My future self was kind of like, huh, why didn't we do that? There was regret. And
wow.
so that was what swayed me ultimately.
That's a fantastic exercise. To tell you the truth, I've done a lot of exercises. I've talked to my future self, but I've never heard of someone running the different scenarios. That's fascinating.
I was like, I ran a scenario and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
what would my future self say to that? If this happens, and
Wow.
what if it's the worst case scenario? What happens? So that's really what swayed me.
That's fascinating. That's a really great tool. It sounds like I'm going to use that for sure. So thank you for that. Then you went and created SoulPlay. What can you tell us something about what happened when you first created it? Like how did it go?
So in the beginning, it was exciting and
Uh,
terrifying and beautiful. Ultimately, it was very stressful,
uh-huh.
especially getting towards the event itself. And we were far from break even.
Uh-huh.
And also just to understand, starting something new is hard. And like
Yeah.
nobody knew who I was or what I was doing or whether it was worth anything. And, I had to reach out to people, presenters, musicians, and sell them on this idea and kind of hope that they'll say yes to my idea and show up. And so it was very nerve wracking and fun as all hell. It was building, it was kind of being in the seed of creation. And I can't describe it. Like I sometimes think about it back then, and it reminded me of it was my art. I was making a new painting or an art piece, making something that had never existed before, and every decision I made was a brushstroke. And sometimes I made a brushstroke and I didn't know if it was where it was going even, or if it was going to work for the whole composition.
Uh-huh.
But I just had to keep going. And there was definitely points in there where, sales were where they were, because it's hard to get people to believe in a new big experience that
Uh-huh.
has no testimonials, has no backing, there's no history. There's nobody to ask, is this for real? Is this legit?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so I remember there was even one point where I remember I had to just be okay with the fact that it doesn't fully work. And but I said to myself, what is the worst case scenario that's actually going to happen? And maybe there was some monetary loss, but it wasn't huge. It wasn't never going to be huge because there are going to be some sales. And so I kind of came to the conclusion where I was like, even if this ends up costing me some money, I kept my expenses low enough so it wasn't super risky.
Uh-huh.
And I said, worst case, I am creating an epic party for my friends. I said, if I don't have enough ticket sales, I'll give away tickets to people I know and hopefully get a bunch of people that will come. Luckily, I didn't have to do
Fantastic.
that in the end, but that was what calmed me down, kind of. So I think for me, one of the mechanisms that helps calm me down when I'm in the unknown is kind of similar to what I did when I needed to make the decision. Is it really helps me to run kind of the worst case scenario or like, some kind of doomsday scenarios, and then remind
Mm,
myself that even if those happen, it's going to be okay. Life will continue. I'm not going to
mm,
die.
yeah,
And I think, it does help to make calculated bets. If you bet the farm and bet everything you have, it can feel a lot riskier.
yeah,
But if you are, somewhat conservative and do things carefully and limit the amount of loss, then the worst case scenario is that you hit the lowest of your predictions. And I think it's important to know that you can live with that. I think it's kind of like when people recommend stocks, or when people recommend to invest in crypto. And then I think in all the crypto sites, there's some line saying, don't invest in this unless you can afford to lose it.
yeah,
And so I do think that there's something to be said of, as much as possible, taking bets that you can live with the loss if it happens. I think
absolutely.
taking bets where you can't live with the loss is not very smart.
No, I've done a fair bit of gambling in my life, casinos and cards, and boy, I see people just lose their entire life. And my philosophy has always been, if you're willing to spend this for the experience and you'll still be happy with it, that's fine. If not, don't do it, because
Exactly.
why risk that? You don't have to. Yeah.
And so I think it's the same with art, with creating art, and it's the same with creating business, which I would put in the same category. You have to be okay with however it turns out. If it turns
Hmm.
out not in the best case scenario and that breaks you, then I think ahead of time the bet was maybe a little bit miscalculated.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Shifting gears a little bit. So, you said somewhere that you're helping people to rise above the ordinary. What does that look like?
I said, yeah,
Um,
something that I would say, I don't remember those words exactly, rise
mm,
above the ordinary, but I
mm,
have said many times when I spoke about SoulPlay and when I speak in general about a lot of the events. I also host a lot of private events, and both formally and informally lead different circles of different kinds, different events. I really like to show people, introduce people that the world of that what's possible is bigger than what they imagined. And so I used to call it, what we're doing is expanding the realm of possibility for people.
okay.
It's not that there is a particular way that I believe that you or anybody else should be.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you should be you, but I think you should be privy to the vast possibilities that you can be and not be confined to what your upbringing and environment
Mm-hmm.
and kind of formal education has, decided that you can be, kind of the box that's been decided for you based on so many factors, socioeconomic, geography,
Mm-hmm.
race, gender. And I guess I see how much is possible and how open the world can be for people, but
Mm-hmm.
I think people are not always aware that they can make those choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I've always believed, like, my events or Soul Play or other events have always have that aim of expanding the realm of possible for people.
You're providing a space where people are given the opportunity to be able to expand themselves,
Yeah.
at least a better opportunity than normal. Mm,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that's
it's
fantastic.
important, yeah, to like try things out. I love creating spaces that operate somewhat like a laboratory for people so that they can try on uh different ways of being, try on being a recluse if you're kind of hypersocial, or
Mm-hmm.
trying being hypersocial if you're usually an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
or try something else that's different from your kind of automatic programming. You know, some people walk into a
Mm-hmm.
party, let's say a party where there is dancing, and will never ever set foot on the dance floor. I feel like there's a lot of people like that. Now, are they doing that because they for sure do not like to dance? Unclear.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many
Unclear. Yeah.
factors and forces that are happening, some
Mm-hmm.
of which are, maybe they don't feel comfortable dancing in front of people because they think that they don't dance well, because they feel like they'll be judged. And that starts
Mm-hmm.
maybe because they judge people who dance or don't
Yeah.
dance well in their opinion. And there's so many things, and it has nothing to do with whether or not they would enjoy it.
Yeah.
It has to do with all these kind of meta layers of perception that
Mm-hmm.
I seek to identify and break.
Mm-hmm. So people are kind of triggering themselves from their habits and yeah, and then
Yeah, I do
not
feel people
able,
get stuck.
yeah, not able to
And
do things.
like people develop a certain way of being, and you're right, habits, and kind of we all have automatic behaviors that we feel safe in. And especially
Mhm.
the older we get, those get stronger and more ingrained.
Yeah, and we have to have some.
Yeah, they're
Otherwise,
very useful. They're very, very useful. They keep us safe, and they're shortcuts in a way. Where as kids we constantly are experiencing new and kind of the world as new, and then we end up forming these habits and strategies to keep ourselves safe in
mhm,
social environments. But I think a lot of times, a few formative events when we are younger create a certain
mhm,
habit groove that never gets challenged ever
mhm,
again because it works a few times when you're younger. Okay, the way to stay safe is to stand over here in the corner and look cool. And that's just it. It
mhm.
worked. It worked in high school. Then it worked in college. And then, when people later on in life don't understand why the social events aren't very satisfying and they don't even know
Mhm.
why.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I see too, is that it can be very limiting for people, especially when they're not aware that habits are habits. When a habit is misidentified as the way the world is,
Yep.
it's really the way you are. One is.
And I think that it really is unsafe to try new things. Sometimes it can feel
Mhm,
unsafe to try new things in a regular environment where everyone is indoctrinated in similar habits and in similar ways
mhm.
of being.
Yeah, and it could be
And
mostly emotionally unsafe, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
because the same way you judge the person on the dance floor, it probably so does a lot of people. And then if you go and do that thing, you're now taking the risk of being the person being judged by
Mhm.
a lot of people, and for real. And it's a real risk.
Yeah, it's an emotional
Which is
risk.
why I do believe in creating environments that are specifically tailored for experimentation, which reduce the risk of trying something out that is not your go-to.
That makes me think, from using your earlier strategy, thinking about, well, it's an emotional risk, but really what's the worst thing that can happen is you'll have an emotion. You will
Yeah.
experience an emotion that you don't like.
Yeah, maybe you'll be embarrassed,
Yeah.
but then maybe there's real risk too. I don't want to say that sometimes there's also real risk. Maybe now your colleagues think you're weird and you don't want that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're taking these risks at in a work situation, that might not be the best venue for that.
Yeah, so I think that's something that I've always tried to explore, of how can you walk the line of authenticity
Hmm.
also in spaces that are not necessarily conducive to that, or like or designed
Hmm.
to encourage authenticity. And it's a real question, and it's not clear, and I think it takes a lot of courage, and sometimes it has negative implications as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are choices of a fairly high order. Yeah.
However, I do believe, and this is why I promote this so much,
Mhm.
I do believe that the more authentically you show up,
Mhm.
and in some ways, even the more you show up, and some of the hints for authenticity is that it does a little bit differ from what everyone is doing. There's something, if you're just kind of playing the game and doing what everyone is doing, it's
Mhm.
hard to know whether this is really the authentic you, or are you just playing the game that everyone is playing
Most
and
likely.
being the way that everyone's being. You have no, it's very hard to know.
Mhm.
And immediately for me, that signals that I don't know much about you. Like, I don't know if this is this really who you are, or is there a whole you that is hidden under the surface? I have no idea.
Mhm.
And I find that one of the best ways for finding out who people are is by modeling authentic behavior, which is a little outside, might be outside of the norm.
Mhm.
And that's an interesting thing where this is where kind of it does cross over, where I feel that in my professional life, and now I am not anymore leading SoulPlay. I kind of transitioned out of that role exactly one
Yeah.
year ago, last November, and have doubled down on another role in a startup where we build software, which also encourages and uh, connection in the workplace. So we basically have a software that's a team development software where people run sessions together, managers run with their teams, and the software
Mhm.
prompts a little bit more, sometimes intimate questions in order to create a bond on the team,
Ah.
and some other things that it does as well. But in the workplace, I have found that I made a decision that I don't want to lead those parallel lives that I spoke of kind of in the beginning from my 20s. That I feel at my best when I'm able to be myself the whole day, not
Mhm.
compartmentalize some part and the other part. And so I take the kind of brave step and I do that, and I am
Mhm.
myself even when it doesn't fit the corporate narrative or the business culture. And what I've found is that by doing so, it actually promotes trust because other people know who I am. They don't have to guess whether or not I'm just trying to fit in, because I'm not.
Mhm.
And it encourages other people to do the same. It basically, that's what I mean by modeling authentic behavior. You
Mhm.
can actually invite other people into authentic behavior,
Yeah.
and it catches like wildfire, and it's amazing when it does.
Mm. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. From my perspective, bringing authentic behavior into a traditional uh, corporate workspace is truly revolutionary act by definition. So I think that really could have, a lot of implications that are very positive. What have the challenges been? Have there been obstacles to that, or have you gotten good enough at it now that you can kind of just walk in and eventually some people will really feel free to be themselves?
Well, yes, I think I've gotten so good at it that I don't think I can do it any other way. And it's
Ah,
just become part of who I am. It's almost like I feel like I've lost the ability to do the other thing where I
mm-hmm,
compartmentalize. And I do think that there are negative implications for that sometimes.
yeah,
I do think that there are drawbacks where my style or my proposals are off putting to people that are not ready
mm-hmm,
to be challenged in that way,
mm-hmm,
and that are not willing to step into that level of vulnerability in the workplace.
yeah,
And so I don't think that it's all positive and all roses, but it's the
yeah,
only way that I can be. I do think that it's probably limiting. Like, it would be very hard for me
mm-hmm,
to probably become kind of a senior executive at a formal large corporation,
Mm-hmm.
because it's harder. I'm not really interested in playing the game.
Yeah.
And, people who are different can also be risky for people.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
true.
not everyone's cup of tea.
That's yeah. That's a good point.
So in the workplace, I think it's problematic. But one place where I think it absolutely shines, and I can't speak the praises of being your authentic self enough, is when dating, for example. When dating or when forming
Yep.
community, friendships. Like there's nothing worse that you can do in dating, whether it's online or when you're actually dating people. There's nothing worse that you can do than to portray a non-authentic picture of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It is the absolute worst thing that anybody can do for finding partnership
Mm-hmm.
or for ongoing partnership.
I agree. Yeah, the authenticity seems to be. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've worked as a dating coach. And problem I see with authenticity, the biggest one, is that people confuse it with just the way that they're behaving now. So I don't know if
Say
you've
more.
seen that. And I think the first step to being it, there's that old advice that people get too of just be yourself. Well, what if myself is very confused you know, and I think the first step is getting to know yourself so that you can become authentic, so that you can share that authenticity with other people, but you can't share it if you don't know who you are. You got nothing to share.
Absolutely. That
Um,
is correct.
so
It is, yeah, it's hard to be authentic if you're not sure who you are. Absolutely. Which is why teenagers and also people in their 20s a lot of times make bad partnership decisions
yeah,
because you don't know who you are. And therefore it's really hard to put your best authentic foot forward. You put the best foot forward that you have at the time.
yeah.
But since we're all just still forming and have no real idea at a deep level who we are yet,
Mm-hmm.
it's always a little bit of a crapshoot. I
Yeah.
think later on in life, it becomes, for most people, more and more apparent, and most people get a better sense of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that even later on in life, people fall back on the terrible, terrible strategy of trying to become something closer to what the other person wants
Mm.
versus trying to lean into who they are, who they know themselves to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, and yes, of course, you only do the best of what you have. If you're still confused in some aspects, that that's that's fine. You are who you are.
Yeah, I
But I
tell.
but I think
Yeah.
people I think more often than not try to become something that they're not. And that's true in the work environment, and that's true in relating, and they try to be what the company wants them to be and be what the person wants them to be. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
an okay strategy for short term, maybe even short to midterm, but it tends to fail in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with relationships, certainly there's this idea of compromise, which is not, sometimes things need to be compromised, but the way I see it, most daily things really, it's not ideal to be compromising them, because when people compromise and give up things that they truly are them, truly appropriate for them, or things they love, whether they know it or not, they start to build up these little resentments. And then
Yep.
those resentments pile up over the years and more and more until one day they come out.
Yeah.
And that can have a lot of, repercussions. And isn't that really the definition of being inauthentic, of what other people want you to be? I mean, well, it's certainly a good example of it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean,
Yeah.
from the way that
Yeah.
I'm speaking of it, I'm sure there's other
Yeah.
ways to define it,
Yeah.
but from the perspective of how I'm speaking about it,
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, yeah, if you are behaving in ways that are not
Mhm.
really coming from you internally, but are coming from a projected, you know, idea of what we think the environment wants me to be, that's what I mean by inauthentic.
Mm. I know that for myself personally, I've made huge progress in these areas by attending workshops. And so, as far as soul play goes, so maybe you could tell me about, are there some of the aspects of soul play where there are workshops that can provide this for people the opportunity to learn who they are and become more authentic?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
that was the whole premise
Mm-hmm.
of this event and this community. The whole premise is, come learn something new about yourself,
Mm,
and
okay.
then develop in some way, develop a deeper relationship with yourself, so that then that becomes now available to you
Mm-hmm.
outside. For the most part, soul play itself, the main event is built up of many, many workshops of lots of different modalities through like
Mm-hmm.
dance or communication or meditation or different, massage or touch, yoga. There's lots of different access points. It's not that
Uh-huh.
everything is not right for everyone at every moment,
Yeah.
but ultimately the way soul play was designed is to provide lots of different access points so that you can actually hopefully feel into what resonates with you in the moment, what's kind of the most resonant in that moment for your path. But
Mm-hmm.
every single one is supposed to do the same thing. It's not that one is better than the other, that's better than the other. It's the entire container of being for several days, specifically soul play, or being for several days in an environment where you're consistently asking yourself questions, consistently in inquiry, consistently pushing yourself, just outside of your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
trying things that you wouldn't normally do. And it's kind of that constant pushing and pushing and pushing that really invites the self-learning. And it doesn't really matter which workshop you do. What
Mm-hmm.
matters is just being in that environment of self-inquiry and actually stepping into it, like participating.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. It's not one exercise or another. I've
Mm-hmm.
come to think, I think it's more any evaluation, any moment where you take a break from your life, and this is true for any workshop or even a party, but any
Yeah.
moment you take break from your life and allow yourself to enter into experience where you're a little bit uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
either because the topic is a little bit something you haven't done before, or the group that's there, is not your typical people, or the rules of engagement are a little bit different. For example, in soul play, we have a strict sobriety rule. So there's no drugs, no alcohol. And that is by design, that is on purpose, not because we are big believers in sobriety as a way of life. That's not the point of soul play. But the point is that, 9 times out of 10, people go to a big social gathering and feel the butterflies in their tummy for about, oh, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of interaction and I have to interact with all these people. 9 times out of 10, people's go to is to grab a drink
Yeah.
or to smoke some weed or do something that takes the edge off to deal with that social anxiety if they're going to meet all these people or if they're going to dance in public. And that decision was by design made to actually invite people to do something that's beyond their automatic behavior and make it a little bit uncomfortable on purpose. And so
Yeah.
I'm
That's.
a big believer, a little bit of
Mhm.
discomfort, but controlled discomfort
Mm.
is it's the fuel for growth.
Yeah. That absolutely. I'm 100% on board with that. Because growth occurs outside the comfort zone. That's the only place it occurs.
I think, but I do think that it's important to be in an experience that pushes you outside of your norm and
Mm-hmm.
pushes you to interact with people or with your environment or with yourself in ways that you typically don't choose to all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So when you look ahead, what do you hope the world looks like in 5 or 10 years? And
Oh, it's a very interesting time to be asking that question.
mm-hmm.
I feel like the world has shifted so much in the last few years, and we are constantly bombarded. I mean, it's actually happening too. We're constantly bombarded with just terrifying news around the globe. You know,
Yeah,
whether it's wars, it's racism, it's like patriarchy making a comeback in lots of ways. Here in the US, our political system is just a mess.
uh-huh,
The economy is just unclear what's happening. Capitalism is going through a reckoning day, and it's unclear what is happening.
mm-hmm,
And so it's interesting because a few years ago, you would have asked me that question. I would have had a vision, that
mm-hmm,
relates to the things that we're talking about, that relates to human connection and hearts and sexuality and options and the realm of possible and people choosing their destiny. And I noticed that it's harder for me these days to think about those concepts because I feel like there's something of a higher order or of a lower order on the Maslow hierarchy, if you will, kind of that is at stake right now.
mm-hmm,
And it feels like the very fabric of our society is being questioned, and
mm-hmm,
people's freedom and people's security. And so it's a hard one. I think more recently, my vision has been more around mending the trauma that has been created and then nurtured for so long, with kind of major conflicts. Like that's something that I've been interested in lately. Like my vision is that we find ways to bring people together. Like I'm suddenly less interested only in kind of bringing people together to experience sexual liberation, which was a big part of what I believed 10 years ago. And now it's just, how do we bring people together to stop cycles of hatred and violent
mm-hmm,
cycles of hatred, with different religions. And in the US, it's even within political parties. And I feel like when I look out, I feel like we are, as humans, humanity has become pretty violent
mm-hmm,
and hate filled. And I think that's kind of my vision is that we find a way through that,
mm-hmm,
and that there's, whether it's through micro events, gatherings, communities, and movements, or through macro movements of,
mm-hmm,
politics and macroeconomic events that push us into the realm of reconciliation
mm-hmm,
and repair, like I want America to stop fighting with China and Russia, and for the Democrats stop fighting with the Republicans and vice versa, and for Israel and the Palestinians to find some way to coexist and not hate each other so much.
mm-hmm,
And so, yeah, that's my hope,
mm-hmm,
is that we find a way to move beyond these like tribalism.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to me that the incredible turmoil and violence that's going on, the things you mentioned and all around the world, and primarily the root cause of that is leaders and people in power being inauthentic, not knowing how to connect with people, and not being able to maybe experience compassion or see things from another person's perspective, which is precisely what people learn to do at SoulPlay.
Absolutely. Or care about the other person's experience. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's the tribalism aspect. I think we leaders and people in the different camps have to, everybody, it all has to work together. Everybody has to see that we're all humans, even the people that are on the other side of the aisle, whatever aisle
Mm-hmm.
you want to draw, and that they matter too. Their experience of life matters too. And I don't know how we get there, because it's true that we see that from the leaders, but then it trickles down. You see that at all levels of society. It's not just, oh, the leaders are maniacs, but the
Mm-hmm.
rest of us, we're okay. It's the same. It plays out the same also at all the levels.
Yeah.
There's
So yeah.
there's camps, and if you're not in my camp, then they're evil or you're dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's only what matters is the righteousness of my camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sick and tired of that. I'm sick and tired of this the rivalry of the camps and everyone needing to be correct. And I don't have an answer for it, but that
Yeah.
is that is what I hope for.
I can see myself that I think those skills and that people learn and things like soul play, those things that are learned there are what really is going to need to come forward, and not just for leaders who may never learn, or not in our lifetimes, but the general population. More and more people. One person at a time is the only way it's ever going to happen. So
Yep. We
yeah.
need to do one person at a time, but a lot at the same time.
Hopefully, one person per room. That would be good. So, yeah, yeah, very
No, but I
interesting.
appreciate
So,
that question. It's a hard question, and it
yeah,
is interesting how my own vision and kind of what I want to do in the world has shifted.
mm-hmm,
Because I think that we're really at a weird place.
yeah, and it's,
Humanity is at a weird place, and
mm-hmm,
don't like a lot of it is great, and then a lot of it is kind of pretty dark.
yeah, it feels like we're at a kind of fork in the road, or a place where some pretty bad things are happening, but at the same time, some pretty really good things are happening,
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
also true.
within it. So, kind of as a reaction to the negative things.
Yeah,
So there seems to be a lot of positive reactions to the negative thing. I think maybe that's just part of the difficulty of the growth process for the species. Um, who knows what's going to happen? 5 years is a long time now.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a long time, but then also, if we want to speak a little bit philosophically, it's also our whole lifetime is not that long,
yeah,
and in the grand scheme of things, and the grand scheme of history,
uh-huh.
it's a moment in time, and it feels really important and crucial because we're in it.
Yeah,
So did every other period in time from the history of time. Felt like it was a crucial moment. And it's true. I don't know how it's going to shake up. And it might, in the certain ways that I care about, it might get worse and worse and worse until it gets better. But I actually
uh-huh.
do believe that ultimately, similar to evolution, things that are terrible and are unuseful, they don't survive.
Hmm.
But they're not always ousted when we want, based on our timeline.
No, though they tend to not last for a real long time, at least not the same form. And I think things now are happening at a much quicker pace than they used to. The world is moving very fast. So
Yeah.
hopefully that means the some of the darker things, some of the shadow will move more quickly out than it has in the past. With that, knock on wood. Yeah. So, boy. So we'll shift back to, so for people that are listening that are maybe looking for connection and
Mhm.
community, um, or feel stuck or lost, what's uh, what's one thing you could say to them, either a suggestion of something to do or just something to think about?
Okay. So, one thing that I would say is that for those of you, if you're stuck or you move to a new place and you're new or you're looking for something, I think it's really important to remember what creates community. And ultimately, a community, or friends, bonds, and ultimately, the way I see it, community or bonds with people get created by consistently having interactions that are meaningful over time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't make community in a day. You can have
Mm-hmm.
an experience with people, but they don't become your friends or become your community until you've shared meaningful experiences over time, over and over and over again. And that is just kind of the bedrock of having community. It's about there's two things to it. It's consistency, like repetitive consistency,
Mm-hmm.
and it's meaningfulness of the interactions. And so I think my suggestion for anyone who's stuck looking for community or looking for connection is to either find something, find a group. And usually it is really helpful if it's around a hobby of some kind. You like to dance, find a dance group. You like to knit, find a knitting group. You like to read, find a reading group. You like to cycle, find a cycling group. It is really helpful to have a hobby that kind of coalesce around,
Mm-hmm.
and then pick something and consistently go once a
Mm-hmm.
week, once every 2 weeks, or once a month, whenever this group meets or whatever this event happens, go. And knowing that the first 3 times are going to feel uncomfortable. They always do.
Yeah.
But there's something magical that happens when you just consistently show up, being yourself, and show up again, and show up again, and show up again. Community is formed. And that's kind of it's really important. And it's not on the first time when you're like, I don't know, it's not really my people. If you don't come again, you're never gonna build community with these people. But it's really important to stick it out and make it past 3 times. And on the 4th time, you don't feel so new, and you actually know people in whatever this group is. And by the 10th time, you are a part of the group. You may be the central part, you may be a non-central part, but you are part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of my best suggestion. And if you're moving to a new place or you can't find a group that coalesces around your hobby or your interests, then start one. And start a monthly potluck, where what you do is talk about the thing that you're interested in. And you know what? The people that are interested in that may show up. And after 3, 4, 5 times, you'll have a community of some level.
Yeah.
And so that would be my suggestion. It's really about finding a thing that there is a group around or starting one, and then making sure not to bow out before you've participated over and over and over again. Like, don't decide that it's not for you until you've been there 4 or 5 times.
I love that. That's great advice.
Yeah, but that it's just built over time. Relationships are built over time, and you can't shortcut it.
Yeah. No shortcuts in this life. Well, Romi, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a good time.
Sorry for taking us on a dark turn.
Yeah, we did get a little dark there, but yeah, that's the world. We get it.
Yep.
James Ferrigno here. And it
Thanks
would
a
be
lot.
great if you guys could subscribe, like, follow whatever platform you're seeing this on, because that really helps me be able to continue the podcast. And so if you can do that, that would really help us out. Thanks a lot.